what um, what we're going to discuss is we're going to do a recap of a few topics from the last few sessions. So what are the different time frames, for example, between operational, day-to-day, tactical, that are chunks of bigger time frames, and lastly strategic, that span a few years. um, Here I've shown like some smaller blocks that represent a day, and I've laid out like 21-day blocks in one row, which represents one work month. So basically 3 rows represent 3 months. So similarly, one block in this tactical um, decision making represents 1 month. So one row will represent 1 year. And so tactical decisions that are updated at a monthly frequency will fall into this category. And lastly, the strategic time blocks are the largest ones, as you can see. And each block represents 1 quarter or 3 months. So that 4 blocks is 1 year, and one entire row, which is 8 blocks, represents 2 years. So what kind of questions and decisions do fall under each of these three categories? Um, so here we have some examples of the questions. So if you want to start from the strategic questions, typically that's how any business starts making like these questions and these decisions. So what to make or buy, which suppliers to choose, how many warehouses to lease, and how many factories are needed, where to locate these facilities are some of the examples of strategic questions. Um, Other questions would be for tactical questions. What kind of purchasing decisions should we make or buy, as Mohan was saying earlier? Or what are the production decisions? Um, what are the inventory policies we should adopt? What kind of transportation strategies we should use? There are also some operational questions like shift scheduling, like within a day or within a week. How am I going to schedule my shifts, my manpower, my resources? How will I do truck routing to minimize delivery times? Or how will I make sure that the trucks are loaded at each of the dock doors? Those kind of minute questions happen on a day-to-day basis. And decisions are also made on the same day by operations managers on the shop floor or supervisors on the shop floor. Um, Going on to the carrying on with the review, uh, what makes a good planning system? So a good planning system. So let's start with capacity and resources. They're actually two sides of the same coin. Capacity is dependent on the available resources. In short, capacity is the amount of work that equipment and labor can perform together in a given time frame. So, for example, how many car seats a day can a factory produce with 200 people and 10 assembly lines? Will it meet the customer demand for 300 cars in a day for 7 different models? So, this kind of a question has considers, do we have the capacity to make so many cars, and do we have the resources to make the car? So when you put it that way, you see that both are the questions on the um, like both are sides of the same coin. So a good planning system must answer these 4 questions of priority and capacity. What are we going to make? What does it take to make it? What do we have and what do we need? So here you have resources and capacity as shown on the slide that include machinery, um, labor, raw material, and money. And capacity is the capability of manufacturing to produce goods and services. Moving on to,
Kedar, sorry to interrupt. I think
yes,
somebody has the mic on. Can you please request everybody to mute their
yes.
mic?
If
Thank you.
Thank you. So anybody who's not speaking, if you may want to mute your mics, that would be great. Thank you. Moving on. So look at what a production planning system is. So as you also showed in your examples, um, there was a demand from the customers, and then for that demand, you have to have your production should have a capacity, which means you need to have the resources to meet that demand. Um, So in the long and short run, manufacturing must devise plans to balance the market demand with its resources and capacity. For strategic long-range decisions, like building new plants, plans spanning a few years must be made. For tactical decisions, which are the smaller blocks that we saw, for example, time span will be in weeks and months. And operational decisions like production across shifts, the time span will be in hours and days. Capacity is a measure of resources like time, labor, and materials that we have, raw materials. Um, the function of establishing, measuring, monitoring, and adjusting the limits of capacity in order to execute all the manufacturing schedule is capacity management. And typically, it is executed at 4 levels. One is at resource requirement planning. Second is at rough cut capacity planning. Third is capacity requirement planning. And fourth is input output control. That's how typically textbooks and manufacturing defines it. Moving on to, so this presentation will have a lot of these process flows and block diagrams, but this is just for conceptual understanding, and don't get like bogged down by it. You can review this later on in details, and you can refer to it. You can. So, what is the manufacturing planning and control system? So, if you look at, there are 5 major levels. I'll call this as MPC. Refer to this as MPC. So, there are 5 major levels of MPC system that vary in purpose, time span, and the level of details. So, it always starts with the big picture, and then we zoom into the finer details. So, we start off with strategic business plan, which is at the highest level of abstraction, and it sets the goal for the company, for the organization. It is then broken down into a production plan, which defines what the sales and the operations plan should be, and then that provides input into the master production schedule, which drives then the material requirements plan, which then translates it into different component levels and sends it to the supplier via ERPs. So, and that, because now it comes to executing phase, it goes to through purchasing and production activity control. So that's how you see the graph going down. Now, based on when the parts that are ordered from the suppliers arrive, production control operates at a daily level and ensures that the planned quantities, what was ordered, are manufactured and are received to satisfy the manufacturing planning system, like the master production schedule. So when actually production activity control and purchasing happen timely, you'll see the company's stock price go up because stock price is an indicator of strategic objectives being met based on the promise that was made to the shareholder. For example, like we will make these sales, so many sales, and it all starts with getting the raw materials to make the parts. So when you meet that target, your stock price goes up, and it's an indicator in the confidence that the market has in the drivers of growth, that your business coupled with strong performance to make and sell what was promised. So showing quickly the inputs and the outputs for each, you need a business plan, financial plan, marketing plan, and capacity as an input to the production plan. Then the output of production plan is an aggregate plan, which is defined by product groups and shows inventory levels. The input to master production schedule here is, they are the production plan, so the top part, right? And then the forecasts, customer orders, inventory, and capacity. And the outputs are the detailed plan, which is by end item, and it is given and broken down in weeks. The inputs to MRP are bill of material, master production schedule, and inventory and capacity that the plant has to manufacture it. So the output of MRP is a time-phased manufacturing and purchase orders for raw materials and components, so that the suppliers get those and then they know when to send it to you based on the lead times. Now we are going to dive into what the manufacturing planning and control system looks like. So we'll split it into two parts: planning and implementation phase. So master plan consists of three elements: strategic business plan, driving the production plan, which in turn dictates the master production schedule. So these three. The MPS, which is at the end item level, feeds the MRP, which splits the demand at the component level, utilizing the bill of materials and available inventory. This is the planning phase. So these four blocks. Purchasing and production control activities are the execution phase, or the implementation phase, where the orders are sent to the suppliers and shop floor inventory levels are controlled. That is receiving parts and then line feeding it for the assembly line to make the products, etc. So as you saw here, the same part we have laid out differently to show in this way, right? The master plan, so the planning phase and the implementation phase. Going to the next slide, we'll say production plan is the sales and operations plan. You've heard SNOP time and again. What is it exactly? So SNOP is a forum. It's a kind of a meeting in which production plan is developed. No one person comes up with SNOP and says, okay, here you go and do it. It's different departments meet together to develop this production plan. The strategic business plan is updated annually or quarterly. Mostly it's annually, and it's updated quarterly. So by integrating all the plans of each department within a company. SNOP is usually held as a monthly meeting where sales, marketing start with the forecast and demand numbers, to which manufacturing, HR, engineering, finance, purchasing, production control and logistics departments all attend, assess their capacities. Like, I have only so many people this month. I have only these machines that can actually produce it. And then they agree to a plan based on the capacity and the resources available. They agree to a plan. And each department states the limitations in terms of time, labor, machine, raw materials. Marketing plan is finally adjusted considering these inputs, and thus the strategic business plan is now updated. So it goes down from strategic business plan, goes into SNOP meeting, and the results of SNOP also go back into adjusting the strategic business plan again. So it's kind of MPS, which is master production schedule, is a contract between marketing and manufacturing. So you have to sign after this typical meeting is held. All department heads sign off to this meeting, and then that's when you know that these numbers are frozen.
Kedar, Girish has a question.
Okay, I go ahead.
Yeah, he raised hand. Yeah, Girish, go ahead.
So normally the supply chain planning, because strategic business plan is the overall business plan, but supply chain planning will purely depend on production plan. Is it correct?
It's not purely, but yes. I mean, so strategic business plan is a business plan organization wide,
Yeah,
but
correct.
it's for each department as well. So
Yeah.
if you say you're going to produce so many cars, that cars will quality department will look at their quality plan, production plan, supply chain will decide their part.
Correct.
HR
That was
will
my
decide
question.
theirs.
Yeah.
But
So
it all starts with making those 700 cars. So can you make them? And then if you can make them, can you do you have the supply chain resources and stuff to support it? Do you have the people there to support it? So on and so forth. So they are all sides of the same coin, so to speak.
okay.
There are different aspects to
in other words,
same.
you have to make the production plan, but if you don't know whether the supply side capacity is there or not, then the production plan will. So while making production plan, also you have to consider the supplier side capacity.
Yeah.
So that way it is. It's a relation is not like it is not the step like, oh, you first make production plan and then you go for supply chain plan. You have to consider some. Okay, then in some case what happened, no, you have to produce that, then maybe supply chain has to find out the ways to, if the capacity is not enough, how to increase.
So normally exactly that. This was my exactly the question. So when production plan is prepared, they always discuss with supply chain about the availability of the raw material and all these things, and then the production plan is generated.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
So Girish, just to add, there is a SNOP meeting, sales and operation meeting happens monthly level or yearly level, and they discuss all those challenges or what are
It's a monthly.
how market is coming, and that's why all discussion takes place, and then they agree on like what they want to deliver in the market.
Yep. So it's a contract. After that meeting, the meeting minutes are signed off by each department head, and then that goes into SPP, and that's exactly what decides that this is the number. The forecast is one thing, but then freezing on what we can do. Forecast is a wish. What can we really do is gauged by each department head, and then they've promised, okay, we can build this much, and that's the promise they sign off on, and then that goes to, it feeds into the ERP and then broken down and then sent to the suppliers. So that Mohan had shown last slide, there were different periods, right? A slushy period, there's a frozen period. That demand now will come into picture here. Anyways, good question, great question. It's basically based on the different products. There are different types of, manufacturing environments: made to stock, made to order, assembled to order, etc. So quickly going to touch on this before the next slide, because I think this is a little bit relevant. So MPS should efficiently represent what manufacturing will make. It's a production plan for individual end items. So FAS here stands for final assembly schedule, which decides what will be assembled based on the customer order, and is usually the last step in any process. So typically there are three manufacturing environments anybody considers. One is, and master scheduling must take place where the least amount of product options exist, not where there are like 100 options to choose from, but because then it makes it difficult to translate that into demand properly. In MTS, let's look at made to stock. Made to stock, let's take an example of TV being manufactured. So MPS, which is master production schedule, is a schedule of finished goods. So it happens at the end product here, right? And not at the raw material. There can be plenty of raw materials, but when the TV is manufactured, the master production schedule is calculated here, and then this is fed into the MRP. In made to order, example of it is tailor-made suits. In that case, I'll give one more example. Like for custom-made suits, MPS is a schedule of actual customer orders. So if you have to take you need clothes for raw material, then you have to take measurements and everything, and then you place an order, and then MPS calculates that and sends it out to its suppliers, to MRP. And in assemble to order, for example, paints, this was also discussed in the last meeting, like Asian Paints, for example, where you can mix colors to get the final shade in the required volume. MPS is done at the level of base colors. So for example, if you have like 10 base colors that can be mixed into 100 different shades, you don't want to calculate MPS for 100 different end items. You want to do it for 10, and then you only conduct the final assembly schedule at the end product for 100 for each of them. So this might be a little confusing. I'll just go on to the next slide, but I wanted to give you an example of what different types of manufacturing environments are. And this material, the master production schedule calculations are not necessarily done all at the same time for each industry. It can vary from industry to industry, and end product by end product. One more daunting looking block diagram and process flow, but not to worry. This is one of a recap of what we have seen so far. So this is called MRP2. We call it MRP2 because it's not same as MRP. MRP stands for Material Requirements Plan, whereas MRP2 stands for Materials Resource Plan. So ERP goes further than MRP or MRP2. So in the sense, it integrates the upstream and the downstream processes to encompass a truly enterprise-wide resource planning system. So IT and expanding scope from suppliers to end customers is what makes ERP so powerful. If computers weren't used to make all the calculations nearly in real time, then we would need more inventory to cover the lead time it would take us to calculate it, and to ensure that stockouts don't happen and lost sales don't happen, just as we discussed in your previous example that you had presented. Now we start discussing capacity in proper earnest. So you can see in the slides, rightmost blocks here, this column, represent the capacity calculations corresponding to each level, from strategic to operational. So resource planning translates the annual, quarterly, or monthly policies from production plan to total measure of capacity, like gross labor hours. How many hours will it take? So we need that level of planning at this level, a strategic level. Then rough cut capacity plan checks the feasibility of the MPS, the master production schedule, and provides any warnings of capacity bottlenecks to the suppliers. So this is a very important medium range operation that we do. And then capacity requirements plan focuses on component parts and calculates work center loads and labor requirements for each time period at each work center. So within the plant factories, within the four walls, each machine, what is the capacity of that? So that's the most detailed of all plans, is the capacity requirements plan. But that happens only after the first two plans are ensured. So because if the supplier can't produce something, it doesn't make any sense to have that many people and machines dedicated to make that particular product when it's going to stay idle if the raw material doesn't come in. So so what is the definition of capacity? So capacity is the amount of work that can be done in a specified time period. It's very simple, straightforward. In the Apex dictionary, that's capability of a worker, a machine, work center, plant, or organization to produce output per time period. So it's a rate of doing work and not the quantity of work done. So a lot of different ways to define capacity. And let's look at some capacity terms. What is the capacity required? It's the system capacity needed for planned output in a time period. What is a load? If you see here in a funnel, there is a funnel and an opening at the bottom of the funnel, and there is water in the funnel. This water, when it crosses this opening and it falls out, how much water comes out is only dependent on the capacity that's available. That's why you see capacity available here. How much total water do you have to empty out is the load, and the output is what you get in your cup or in your bucket outside of this funnel. So easy mnemonic to keep in your head. So your load is the planned work over time period, which means how much water you have. This is all the planned work. All of that needs to be emptied out. So that's your planned work. Capacity management, what is that? Is the function of establishing, measuring, monitoring, and adjusting the levels of capacity to execute all manufacturing schedules. So we know we have only this much opening, so we can only produce this much output and give any given time period. So we have to monitor that and adjust it. If we have a valve that we can control the output, we can reduce it or we can maximize it. Then we can, and if we can measure, this is exactly what we want, and we don't want, we can shut it off. That's kind of capacity management. So when the demand goes down, you should be able to cut back on capacity. When the demand goes up, you should be able to mobilize more people or resources to get that. Capacity planning is a process of determining resources needed to meet the priority plan and make the methods needed to make that capacity available. Capacity control, it's monitoring the output the production output, and comparing it with the capacity plans that we just saw earlier, and then taking corrective action when needed.
Okay,
Let's-
One minute. Yeah.
Yes.
Jagdish.
Yeah. My question is that if the means load has to be means you cannot have infinitely high load because the capacity is always going to be limited. So if there is a consistent high load, then it's better to improve the capacity. Maybe you can have more funnels, more openings for this funnel, like this, something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the load is typically comes from the customer demand side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to have high load because that means you can sell more. So you have to ramp up capacity for that. But if the load is going to be temporary, like Amazon deliveries only here during Amazon Prime Day or Diwali,
Yeah.
and you design your system based on peak demand, for example, then the rest of the year you will have people sitting idle or resources sitting idle. You can't do that. So you have to have a different strategy for it. You probably want to hire seasonal workers and have a flexible system that you can turn off in off-season times, for example. So you need to have those additional funnels only for that kind of time, or those pipelines for that. So good point. Great question. I know. So we have been discussing these block diagrams and terms. So it's kind of gotten a little heavier. Let's get into some exercises that we can fix some of these ideas. So just go along with me. You don't have to. If you have a calculator next to your hand, great. If not, because these are fairly simple exercises just to give you an idea. So let's say a work center has 3 machines and is operated for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. What is the available time? So now typically this example is what representative of a real scenario at work. So your work week is only 5 days. Saturday, Sunday doesn't include a work week. It's Monday through Friday. One shift typically is 8 hours, and let's say that one has 3 machines. What do you think is the available time? I will open it to anybody to provide their answers. What do you think it is? Any guesses? Is it there are 3 machines, right? So I'll give you the answer. It's 3 machines. Better yet, I'll get the answers. I mean, does anybody else have any answers, or should I go ahead and give?
We answered in the messages in chat.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I don't see them.
Okay.
120.
Sorry, 120. Perfect.
120 hours.
Perfect. How did you get it? 3 times 8 times 5. Right?
Actually, I didn't speak out because the next line you have the same number, so I thought you are expressing same.
But that's also a trick. So somebody could have told me that I looked at the next line, and so you put the link together. Please speak out. Don't feel because I can't see the numbers. And also provide your thinking, because that's exactly what this is. It's a pretty straightforward calculations for all of these exercises. Calculate capacity. So you're right. So work center is available for 120 hours. But so now the second question, it's available for 120 hours, but I actually only produced goods for 100 hours. What is its work center's utilization? What do you think?
It's 83%.
Yes.
So it's you can also give in ratios. You can say 100 over 120, right? So exactly. So now a work center makes 120 units per shift, because that. But the standard for that item is 100 units per shift. But that's a standard now. Okay. So, but what is the efficiency of the work center? I flashed it for you.
12% more.
So what is the answer? 12% more. So 12% more than, so it's 100%?
So it's 112%.
Oh, 120%.
Yeah.
120%. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's, but you're right. I mean, it's in a ratio, it makes 120, but the standard is only 100, right? So whatever it makes in bonus, 20 extra, so your efficiency is over 100%. So if it were 100 units and standard was 100, then it would be 100%. If it's 120, it's 120%. So what is the rated capacity of the work center above? So it is, I'll give you this answer because, so it's available time multiplied by utilization multiplied by efficiency. And it's 119.95 standard hours. So these are all capacity terms that you calculate, honestly. And by the way, you will have these slides. So you will have all these exercises and their answers with you. But if you want to, so these are all capacity terms and they're calculated at the capacity requirements plan level, right? And so the most detailed of plans, and all these outputs are calculated first beforehand before you go into the SNOP meeting, so that you should have all this information for all your production facility. That's very important and key. We were talking about.
Can you please explain it again, the earlier slide?
This one?
Because I got confused with the last rated capacity calculation.
Okay. So look at the work center. Work center had available time has nothing to do with work center, right? So far, you got this part. Work week only has 120 hours per week that you have people available to actually make that product. Utilization is how much. So hours worked versus available hours. So available hours you have 120. That's all you have. So
yeah,
but you typically don't end up working everything because you have breaks, you have holidays, and then there are. So you subtract that, and you get something less than 100% as utilization. Understood so far?
Yeah.
If now, let's say efficiency. What is the actual rate of production divided by the standard rate of production? So how do you come up with the standard rate of production? There are ways to, you want a reproducible and consistent production numbers. So you come up with a standard by doing multiple repetitions of it. And that standard you can, it may be lower than what the maximum is, but it's a standard rate of production. You need to have that as a benchmark so you can do all your other calculations. But what a particular work center may do, or the other work center may do, may vary based on the people and their expertise or how long they've been at that job. So the actual rate of production at each work center can change. So the efficiency at each work center can also change. So a work center is like a group of machines that you can have. Like if you have a milling machine or a CNC machine or a cutting machine, efficiency is the person who's handling that machine, how much can that person produce on that particular machine versus the standard. So it's always a comparison to the standard.
In third line efficiency, the actual rate you will consider as 83.3%.
Actual rate?
Yeah, in the third line, efficiency is equal to, you have said actual rate of production.
Yeah.
Divided by standard rate of production.
Correct.
100%.
So here the question was here, right? So how much did you produce here? So 120 units per shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 120 divided by 100 into 100. Make sense?
Okay.
You have 120 units per shift right here, and then you have 100 units as a standard. So that's actual rate is 120. You produce 120, but you're comparing it to 100. So 120 divided by 100 times 100% is 120%.
Actually, I thought it other way around. Efficiency is something which you are able to offer, but you are not able to utilize that much. So your efficiency is less. That is what I was thinking. The utilization, what you have.
So you got confused between how utilization and efficiency is defined.
Right.
Got it. This is how, because efficiency, you always have to compare it to a standard, because you say efficient as compared to what? Think about it that way. So you need to have a standard, and standard need not be max. Utilization is not that way. Utilization is, again, dependent on time. It's not yet up to a machine capacity. There is no hours actually worked up and divided by available hours. The available hours, again, is a purely time thing, but how many actual hours do you work? It's also usually not in your control. So available time and utilization are out of your control. Efficiency, on the other hand, is in your control.
Okay.
So that's why you do standard measurements and all that. And then rated capacity is you multiply all these three to get a number that you can promise based on. So you know what your available time is. You know what is the utilization of that work center based on hours worked on that work center. And then efficiency is what you can control. So if you want to increase capacity and but your efficiency is already 120%, it doesn't make any sense. That's not your bottleneck. You can't increase capacity at that particular work center anymore, because then if any other work center has a lower efficiency, that will become the bottleneck. And as a system wide, if you want to increase your production rates, just increasing efficiencies on particular work centers doesn't help. So there are differences. We will cover that in the later topics. Just
So
for
just
time's
one
sake.
question here,
Okay.
that we have considered one shift of 8 hours, right?
Yes.
So as far as utilization or rated capacity, increasing the rated capacity is concerned, adding one more shift, how it is looked at, or
Yeah, we will cover that in the coming slides.
Okay.
We have some more slides to go. We will cover.
Sorry, I have one
Sure.
question on this.
Go ahead.
My rated capacity calculation, what I did was, once you have utilization, you don't have to consider the available time, because no matter what is available time, what time you are utilizing, that is going to generate the output. So I considered only utilization and efficiency. So for 83%, you are giving 120 output. So for 100%, how much you will give?
Yeah. And what
So
did you get?
that is coming 142.
Okay. So the problem here is, I think let's discuss these exercises after I finish the presentation, so that
Yeah, no problem.
we can spend more time there, because I want to cover all the topics first, and then we can get into these exercises again.
Can I ask only one question?
Let's okay, quick question.
It's only
I really want to finish this. There are a lot of slides left. So
Or yeah, actual rate of production and standard rate of production. So in the actual rate of production means the machine capacity, and the actual standard rate means we are considering the like machine breakout or anything. Is this the difference between both of them?
no, standard is measured on the same machine.
Okay.
The worker and machine together, they produce goods. So standard rate is when you take 20-30 measurements of different people producing with that on the same machine. How many can they produce, and what should be the standard rate? It doesn't need to be maximum rate. It's not the maximum rate it's a standard rate of production. Actual rate varies by shift, by worker experience, by state of the machine, for example. So I mean, those two are different, and I'll come back to that after the next
generally we
slides.
call it as a mean value as well when you say standard rate.
Yes.
Right.
It is the main value. So let's quickly look at a recap of. Let's look at the planning levels, right? So we have priority and capacity on left and right. So it's like two scales of the balance. On the left hand side, we have production plan. Corresponding to it is a resource plan. So you can see from strategic level to operational level or implementation level, how the priorities are balanced with their capacities, all the way to execution. So we are just recapping what we have seen so far, right? Production plan has resource plan, master production schedule has rough cut capacity plan, MRP has capacity requirements plan, and production activity control has capacity control, which is the shortest range. Now, let's go into discuss a few quick terms about capacity requirements planning. What kind of inputs look like in the real world? So CRP is typically at the MRP level, as we saw in the previous diagram. Previous slide. Here, capacity requirements plan, right? This is short range. And capacity planning is most detailed, complete, and accurate of all the capacity planning techniques, the 4 techniques that we saw. And the inputs to the CRP are open order file, which is all active shop orders. MRP gives all the planned orders, that is the future capacity needed. So all the demand that is coming in from the customers is broken down, and that's the future capacity for the work center machines. Then the routing file is the it gives you routing. What do you mean by routing? Is a path that the product will flow as it gets made. So part first gets cut, it gets drilled, it gets milled at different stages of the different work centers, so that it moves that way to come into its final state. So for each product, a different routing file. Work center file defines your work center, has move, wait, queue, lead times for each job. Shop calendar, which I'll show you in the next slide, it provides the working days. Here you see what a planning calendar looks like. I've taken it from a textbook, which, as you see, there's a month of July, then it's broken down further into weeks, and then the weeks have Monday, Tuesday through Saturday, Sunday. And then in the top half of the diagonal, you have the date of the calendar. So July the 2nd, and 123 is the work day in the particular year. So it's 123rd work day in the year. Tuesday is 124th work day in the year. So 3rd of July. So if you look at just this block, you can see 3rd of July is 124th work day. 4th is a holiday. So it's a non-work day. So that's why it's defined as non-work day. And then the 5th of July is 125th work day. Since this was not a work day, there's nothing here. So 124 to 125. So you typically have to create this in order to arrive at your, you look here, available time, you calculate it using a planning calendar. It makes sense because you have how many hours per week. You can go here to planning calendar and you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 days in this particular week times 8 times, and if I'm running only one shift, then it's 8. And if I have 3 machines, then it's 3. So that's how you're going to calculate that's how you're going to use your planning calendar. Now, there are simple questions like how many work days are there in a year typically? How many work hours are there in a week? How many work hours in a day? These kind of questions are important because they look at the time, which is a main resource, and manpower resources, and they help define the capacity constraints at each level. So if you think about it, what are the holiday calendars by country? What are the holidays in China? What are the holidays in India? What are the holidays in US? How about UAE? What if manufacturing is in China, suppliers are in US, customers are in also in US, some customers are in UAE, and some customers are in India. If you look at the entire supply chain, when you order, you'll have to order parts to receive them from a factory in China. So you need to know their calendar, holiday calendars. So because China will produce the modules because they are the suppliers. So now once they produce, then should you ship them to the US to assemble into end items? So then you can ship to the customers in US, UAE, and India, for example. So knowing planning calendars for each of your suppliers, I mean, you shouldn't know that personally, but each of your supply chain managers typically knows these kind of things, and the MRPs and the ERPs, they already know. You have to load these into MRPs so that MRP calculates it correctly. Because if you fill, so in SAP, there are options to include these planning calendars. Anyways, I'll move on. Time check. Can somebody tell me how much time I have?
What we will do, I think next slide you have the questions, no? So already
Yes.
it is actually 1.5 hours.
Okay.
We have completed. So can we do this way? Because this another, I think we have a lot of slides. We will have this question sent to them to answer. There are 2 exercises I saw, and then we will continue next time on this.
Okay.
So next slide, there is a question. I think we will send a message asking some question up till now what you have learned. We will give this presentation up till now to them, ask the question, and then after 2 slides also there is one exercise I saw. I will
Yes.
explain little bit about this. So this is the so those questions we will send, and let them answer. This is not the, I think, big case study or something. It's not a, it is short questions, and then next time we will see the answers from you, and then Kedar, you can continue.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Will do. So I've
Yeah.
stopped sharing.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. So we can have questions until we have, I think, 4
5
more
minutes,
minutes.
Kedar. Yeah.
5 minutes. So you were talking about utilization, efficiency. You had questions,
I
right?
think Satishji had some questions or some. Yeah.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
In the chat also there are some questions.
Let me go.
Yeah. I'll stop recording. Someone had asked.
I'll start with Bhagyashree. No,
Yeah.
Bhagyashree, you actually asked, no? So
Yes, I asked already.
what was your question, Bhagyashree?
It was like the standard time, and basically my question is that you have mentioned the standard time over there
Mhm.
and the real time. So in
Actual
that,
time.
are we considering the problems what we are facing, like the machine is down or something like that? Are we considering in that planning, or it is not considered over there?
So okay, I see what you're saying. So in the standard time, you don't consider if the machine is down. Standard time, you assume everything is running fine. You have the machine there. You have a person standing there. You want to keep variability as minimal as possible. So standard repeatable process is what you check. If you can, because when you do a capacity check, you know how much you can produce. You give that as a promise to your departments. You can say, I can produce this much a week for sure. So you can't overpromise, and you definitely don't want to underpromise. You can't say, I just can do only 5 pieces when you can actually do 100. So there is like within production also, you have to take standard times. You have to do standardization for part of it. So you measure it in under certain ideal conditions, and then everybody is trained to the standard conditions. Now, when you measure performance, actual performance, that can vary day to day and week to week, and you can have higher than standard and lower than standard, and then you make corrections as per that. So the actual is only comes in when you're calculating the efficiency. So if you want to, you have a standard board which is asking you what is your efficiency for today. If you have that meeting on the production floor, or if you have that meeting in the in your office, for example, the production manager comes in and says, show me all the efficiencies of all your work centers, for example. Then you have those actual numbers, and then you say, you know what, my productivity was less here because I was missing parts, or this person was new, he wasn't fully trained, so on and so forth. So that's where the efficiency comes in. Or if somebody will say the previous machine was super efficient, but the following machine, which was a bottleneck because inventory piled up before that. So I can only do so much. So the system was not laid out properly. That could be an example. I hope I answered that question.
Okay. Yes. Means we are considering the efficiency, right? Mostly.
Yeah, I mean, where we want to consider it. So for capacity, yes, we do consider efficiency, utilization, and available time, all three. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
I think 2-3 terms you might be knowing. One is industrial. In industrial engineering, there is a work study and method study which will define the standards. And then when you come to efficiency, because even capacity is the installed capacity, they say. The installed capacity is when you buy some machine and all, installed capacity is this much. And then it will be something actual run, you will have some capacity, you will come to know. That will give you the efficiency. And it depends on various factors other than what I think installed machine capacity, but other thing like Kedar mentioned.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Okay. Anything? I think there was one about terms. Some question was there. If you see scalability, What's that?
So what is the scalability, Jagdish?
Yeah, is it same
No,
as
but going by your example of that funnel with a wall, and you said you can increase or decrease the flow. So I said, is it something related or similar to scalability? So you can ramp up or reduce the production depending upon the demand, supply, and all.
Okay. So the load is, so when I showed the funnel, it was the load and the capacity. Oh, 1 second. Sorry, he just woke up. Sorry. So the question that you were asking was, is it scalable in terms of is the capacity scalable? It is. So I think we answered that question, right? We can have the load is a reflection of the demand, and how much water there is in that funnel. The capacity is only the pipe that the water can come out of. How big that is will define the rate at which it can come out. So if you want to increase it, you need to have additional pipes that are flowing it, and you need to have, if your production system is flexible and scalable, then you can be you can have a scalable system. If not, then it's difficult to increase capacity typically. So like for example, if you have an assembly line and you want to increase capacity, your assembly line can only make 100 units per shift, and you want to now ramp up, then you will have to install another like offline workstations to help ramp up production. You might not need an entirely new assembly line, but looking at what work centers, by just ramping up or adding capacity to them, can we increase the like capacity for the entire line? If you can do that analysis, and then you can just add extra capacity to the bottleneck workstations, then you can actually increase overall assembly line capacity as well. That's how typically it's done in the manufacturing environment, certain manufacturing environments, automotive.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we can cover that in the next session.
Okay, one small question.
Sure.
As we mentioned about the capacity, maybe the actual deployed capacity or the utilization capacity, whatever it is, but having that in place, now you have some capex, you have some opex, the cost of labor, and maybe utilities, right? So having set, having those figures in hand, and the numbers you make end of the shift, okay, whatever is the job, okay, so you may come to some specific your cost for that job, okay.
Yeah.
And then if you have to relate with that your quotations, are we going to consider all those points later on? How to work on your pricing or
Okay.
Yeah.
So typically, you're thinking of, when you're thinking of producing a certain part, you have already done all this analysis. So you don't build a factory first and then decide the pricing on it later. You do the exercise done typically the opposite way. Like greenfield automotive plants are set up knowing all these costs beforehand, and you know the margins and stuff beforehand. Am I answering your question?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I know what you're trying to say. You're trying to say what is the material cost, and to assure that the profits that I have are viable. I don't want to promise first and then design everything later, but that's typically how it's done. You end up promising the price at selling point first. You do all these calculations, capacity calculations beforehand. Yes. So you know, I have if I build a factory of this capacity, like 8 hours, I have so many work centers, and I assume this utilization and this efficiency, then I can come to this. And then you you pad those numbers a little worse than that you might actually have, and then you build to that specification, that factory, and then to that rated capacity, because you will assume so many people, you will take their hiring cost, you will assume so many machines, you will take all those costs in picture, and then you will go ahead and build it. But how realistic is your are your assumptions will make you better than a competition, or will make make the difference whether you sink or float? If your calculations are way off, then it'll be really difficult to be profitable. So you might need to hire expert consultants who are in that industry to help you come up and sound that plan out before you go in. So I hope I answered the question.
Sure. There are some complications in that we discussed.
Yeah, we can discuss that offline if you want.
Yeah, because
But
this you
again,
are
let's
talking
talk to-
overhead and the processing cost, both things. But generally, what happens, we do some study. Like you have to put the plant in somewhere. Like example is when we were putting plant in India, for example, you have some plant one where we have plant in China, and when we were putting plant in Mexico or India, and then whole this study was done. Like okay. How much overheads, how much processing cost will be there, considering all the factors and all, and then some assumptions. But those assumptions, how accurate you can make, it depends on that how much that plant will be profitable or not. And then compared to, suppose you have multiple locations, then the question comes like which location is more profitable and all. So of course there are much lot of details are involved, specifications are involved, and there will be complexities there in that
Yeah.
work out, because it's everything. Many things are assumptions based.
True.
Some are maybe the fairly well accurate information is there. How much information you have is another thing.
Yeah.
So that it depends on all. If you may have your historical internal data is there,
Oh yeah.
or you have
Exactly.
to collect the data from outside. That's the another part.
If you have one plant and you're coming up with a second or third plant, then it's a lot easier to get that data versus
You
if
have
you're starting off
internal data.
greenfield. Yeah. Exactly.
Maybe I have one last question. Sorry, I know it's a bit late, Mr. Kulkarni, for you basically. It's Hong Kong already.
No problem. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's a very basic and very primitive question you may consider, but while means it's not related to today's session, it was about the costing. When you are calculating supply chain costs, normally because we have typically SG&A costs, we have manufacturing costs. So where does supply chain costs, they're in the cost center of the company typically?
Just one quick pause. Dr. Manoj, you can stop the recording now and we can continue to take these answers.
No, I had stopped recording.
Still showing recording.
Yeah.
Okay. Stop. I see the recording icon in the
Oh.
top.